Welcome back to Mets Daily. I'm your host, Jake Brown, at Jake Brown Radio. Make sure you smash that thumbs up right now for us on YouTube. We appreciate the support as we're closing in on 1,000 subscribers. My birthday is tomorrow, February 5th, so make it a birthday present for me. Let's get to 1,000. Please subscribe and share the channel. Get us to 1,000. That's the only birthday present I'll ask for Mr. 205 here. So hit that subscribe. Comment below. What do you think of the show? Soon we will be incorporating weekly guests. Again, today's video will be comments being read for tomorrow's mailbag. It'll be a birthday mailbag tomorrow. So comment below. The best comments will be read on Wednesday, February 5th, my birthday show. So thank you so much. Comment, subscribe, share. Subscribe to my YouTube at Jake Brown Radio. Follow me at Jake Brown Radio. Not a ton going on in Mets land, but it's another day as we await Pete Alonso. And let me preface what I'm about to say with this. The 2024 Mets brought me so much magic. They brought me so much joy. That home run by Pete Alonso in Milwaukee was one of the most euphoric moments of my life. I was at the Citi Field watch party, hugging strangers, jumping on top of people, celebrating what was euphoria. It was the player that we least expected to come up big in that spot, come up with a home run. After a season where he never was able to come through in big spots, he came through. And we were euphoric. We celebrated. He also had a couple of homers throughout the playoffs in the NLCS, but that was the pivotal home run that sent the Mets to the NLDS, and we'll remember it forever. I'll remember that moment forever, and it'll live with me forever. He's a guy that's hit a ton of home runs in a Met uniform that if he were to stay, he'd break every Mets record essentially, from home runs, RBIs, everything else. And the 2024 Mets, really helped me through a dark time. Being laid off at the New York Post, moving away from Astoria, Queens, a place that I loved for 10 years, all in the same week, they made me come back. They had this Mets fan coming back for that October playoff run, going to every home playoff game, going to a couple games September. That run, what they did, had me coming back to the place that I love to go to, the place that brings me so much joy and more joy than anything else, Citi Field, my Citi Field family, my suite attendants, the bartenders, the workers, all my friends and family at Citi Field that I love. That Mets team and Pete Alonso had me coming back for that. Now, with all that being said and what that Mets team did for me emotionally, my mental health, everyone else, there may not be a team that matches until they win a World Series. But I also think this. I think the Mets might be in a better place if they were to move on for Pete Alonso. And I know my bald brother, Sal Licata, said something similar where he said the relationship might be fractured. And I know a lot of people want to hate on Sal and, say he says one thing one day, another thing the next. I don't think he's wrong in this situation. The Mets clearly show they want Pete Alonso, but at the number they want. They didn't want to blow him away and give him, a massive overpay here. Pete Alonso has showed that he wants to get a bit of an overpay. He wants to get that big contract. And obviously a lot of this is Scott Boras. But we all need to realize this. He has had deals on the table from the Mets that he has turned down. And while the agent has been a disaster, and we know what Scott Boras is, Pete Alonso is in control at the end of the day. If there is an offer that's on the table, he can accept it, he can decline it. He's declined the offers. So as much as Mets fans' emotions are tied into Pete coming back, as much as I understand the Mets right now with Pete Alonso on their roster are better on the field than they are without him, I think he's replaceable. And I think the Mets can make the overall roster better by getting a cheaper first baseman, maybe adding another reliever, maybe adding another backup catcher, another infielder. They can divvy up that money other ways and then still go out and get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next offseason. So I don't think Sal's wrong. I don't think the Alonso naysayers are wrong. And I don't think the Alonso people that want to back are wrong. No one's really wrong in this situation. Scott Boras has been wrong. Pete Alonso's been wrong. But the fans aren't necessarily wrong. I'm not wrong. You're not wrong. None of us are really wrong in this spot. But I do think he is replaceable. And I do think that the Mets can go on without him. And they don't care about homegrown records and this and that, because Alonso clearly hasn't cared that much about those records and being a legacy Met either. Because the deal would have been signed already if that were the case. And I do think there is something in what Sal said, and I've said it, is that the relationship is a little fractured. He shows, he signs a deal, it's first week of spring training now and comes in the locker room. I'm sorry. He wasn't shown that he wants to be there. The Mets didn't show him that they want him there that much. It was a kind of no one else wanted me, I'll be back. Is that really what you want? I just think it's reached a point that it's just gotten a little bit awkward. And I think there are other options out there, whether it's a trade for Yandy Diaz, whether it's a trade for Mountcastle or Torkelson. Alonso is a regressing player. In 2023, he had the worst average and on base of his career. In 2024, he had the worst homer and RBI numbers of his career. He had a terrible WAR. He struck out 172 times. Before the homer in Milwaukee, he was the least clutch player on the team. That's just the reality of the situation. He was not clutch. And I get it. He's had a memorable Mets career, and it goes beyond 1 year, goes beyond 2 years. But when you're talking about a guy that's going into age 30, 31 now, is he really going to put up those polar bear 50 homer numbers again? Is he going to get back to 2019 to being a 270, 280 kind of hitter? I don't know if he has that in him. And I do think that the Mets got to consider moving on here. And I think if the reality of the situation is he's going to sign because there's no other interest. He's going to be a Met. We don't know what the number's going to be. But I think Mets fans got to realize this. This team can go on and will go on without him if they need to. And I actually think they'll just be fine if that ends up being the case. And you know why? Because they've had a really good offseason. And I think a lot of people want to trash the Mets offseason, but the reality of it, the Mets have had a more projected 2025 WAR than anyone else in baseball. And you're probably thinking to yourself, how is that possible? Or maybe they just add a lot of guys. Well, look at the chart via Mike Petriello of MLB.com. Yes, they've had a more projected WAR this offseason than the Dodgers, Red Sox, Cubs, Yankees, Rangers, Reds, Blue Jays, Phillies, Giants, Tigers, Braves. Mets are number one. And I know a lot of people say, well, they haven't done anything since Soto. Well, they've added nice pieces. They've added depth to that rotation. They've added some depth to the bullpen. They signed 4 starting pitchers, Manaea, Holmes, Montas, Canning. They signed a pair of relievers, A.J. Minter, Ryan Stanek. They signed, veteran position players in Jose Siri and Jesse Winker. They've added a good amount of pieces to this roster, and their youth has projected better. Their young guys, their minor leaguers, are projected to be solid ball players. So when David Stearns and Steve Cohen go out there and say, we like what we have internally, he's talking about Luis Angel Acuna, talking about Ronnie Mauricio, maybe Brett Beatty, obviously Mark Vientos, who's an everyday player, Ryan Clifford down the road, who was watching, Brandon Nimmo was watching him today, which was a beautiful sight to see in the cages. But the reality is the Mets have had a really good offseason. And it's a team, like I always said, was 2 wins from a pennant. Yes, they got hot at the right time. Maybe they had some OMG and Grimace magic. But this was a really good baseball team for a majority of the season. They were bad for 2 months, month and a half. They were great for the remaining 5. And that's what matters. They got hot when they needed to. And they have added a lot of pieces. And I don't think Mets fans understand what adding Juan Soto actually means to the lineup. If you do lose Pete Alonso, you have Juan Soto. And they're not in the same stratosphere as terms of players. Juan Soto is light years better than Pete Alonso. So I think fans stress who's going to hit behind Soto. What are they going to do? They got the manager, GM, and owner to figure that out. And if it comes to a point where this lineup's not cutting it, they'll make an addition. They'll go out and get someone from a team like a Tampa, like a team like a San Diego. They'll go out and get Yandy Diaz in June or July if they need to, if they were to move on from Alonso. But, there's been a lot of hate on David Stearns and Sleepy Stearns and this owner sucks, this GM sucks. Again, I've said it on here. The structure's in place here in Metsland. The structure's in place here in Queens. Then that structure doesn't matter about Pete Alonso. The Pete Alonso situation is not part of the positive, era that the Mets are in right now. And people got to understand that the professionals know what they're doing. This isn't, a fumbling of a GM, a fumbling of an owner. It's an owner that's letting the GM handle this. Yes, the owner stepped in and handled Soto. That's a once-in-a-lifetime deal. But Pete Alonso is a regressing player. And this has been a tremendous offseason for the New York Mets. And it's tremendous because the PECOTA projected standings for the Mets in 2025 has them winning 89 games and making the playoffs, as you see on the chart right there. And I pretty much agree with this. Whether Alonso's back or not, I agree. I think the Braves are the first place team, Mets are second, and the Phillies are third. The Phillies have done nothing this offseason. They've added Kepler, and they've lost a lot. So I think they were hot at the right time and made the playoffs. They were hot the first couple months, then they got cold. If the Braves are healthy, this is probably their division, but no doubt about it. I think the Mets are right there behind them. So I agree with these projected standings. Right around 92 wins for the Braves, right around 89 wins for the Mets, and the Mets get a wild card spot. the rest of the standings, they have the Cubs winning the Central, they have the Dodgers winning the West, and they have the Mets, Phillies, and Diamondbacks getting the 3 wild card spots. And I would probably agree. I actually agree with these projections. I like what the Diamondbacks have added. I think they're a contender right behind the Dodgers for a championship. I think the Central is usually the weakest division, and the East will be a 3-team dogfight per usual. So, again, we're right around the corner from pitchers and catchers next week, guys. My birthday tomorrow. I'm turning 34. You can call it what? My Mike Pelfer and Noah Syndergaard year. The Yankees signed Tim Hill for under $3 million. A great move by them, bringing Tim Hill back today. Danny Coulomb, who I wanted, goes to the Twins for a couple million. 2 guys that I wish the Mets were in on, 2 lefties. I wish they were to get one, but they do have A.J. Minter. But keep the faith. If Alonso's back, if he's not, the Mets are going to be just fine. Subscribe to Mets Daily. We're back tomorrow. Share the channel. Comment below. We're reading your best comments on tomorrow's show in the mailbag segment. I'm Jake Brown at Jake Brown Radio. Thanks for watching Mets Daily. We'll see you tomorrow on 205.